As we do, we are officially calling this meeting to order, and I'm not going to be up here today guiding a meeting, but our attorney did remind us, because of open meeting laws, that we had to publish the meeting, and we have more entities than they would even recommend, right? So we are going to go through roll call. So we're going to do a couple of things. I'm going to turn it over to Shar, and she's going to lead us through. And then after that, Krista, I'm just going to have you come up. So Krista's going to really introduce where we are today. And I appreciate Krista's with our economic development team, and she's been working through this process, and I greatly appreciate her help and her work. So after we do roll call, I'll let you come up and kick off the meeting. So just a couple ground rules. Because this is a live streamed meeting, we're going to ask that if any comments are made, that we use the microphone, and that you state who you are and what organization you're with. So, and this is, the purpose of this meeting is actually interactive, to hear comments, to hear feedback. And then just a reminder for those that are representing, whether it be NDC or City Council, whatever, there is no action being taken at this meeting. This is for discussion purposes only. The only action will be when we close the meeting. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our city clerk, Shar, and then Krista, you can come up afterwards.
Madam Mayor, before we start roll call, we do have 5 members that need to identify which group they're going to be representing, as they have overlapping membership, and this is pursuant to our legal team. So if Councilmember Bruner, could you tell me which one you'll be representing?
City Council or NDC?
Should I flip a coin or what? Point of order.
Yes.
If you're a city council member and we have more than 4, we're a quorum anyway, we have to basically state that we're city council. It's not like we can choose not to be city council and not have a quorum. We're gonna have a quorum.
Okay, so yeah, if you could stand up and speak into the mic.
Okay, just a point of order. If there are city council members here and we have a quorum, they can't choose to not be a part of the quorum. I think with the open meeting law being the way it is.
So I think what you're saying is city council members will be representing city council.
City Council.
So that answers your question.
Earl Brunner.
And that would be for Haverfield as well. Okay. Hutchings,
Thank you.
Lind, and Shebolt. Okay, so for roll call for Nampa City Council, Rodriguez. Here. Bruner. Jangula. Reynolds. Here. Haverfield. Here. Bauer. Here. For Nampa Planning and Zoning Commission, Miller. Morgan. Kirkman. Garner. Selman. Van Auker. Kehoe. Turner. They do not have a quorum. Nampa Development Corporation. Dina. Rhodes. Lee. Cornelis. Hutchings. For Business Improvement District, Lind. Baker. This is Jordan Baker.
This is Jordan Baker as well.
Thank you. Vincent. Romeyer. Shebo. Johnson. They do not have a quorum. Downtown, excuse me? Okay, great, thank you. For the Downtown Nampa Community Association, Colindres, thank you. Hutchings? Minette? Davis? Baker? Kerr? Goodman? And I'm sorry, I think I did Hutchings twice. I apologize.
For a point of clarification, for those that you did not say they do not have a quorum, we're assuming they do have a quorum. You said there was not a quorum for one of them, but the rest we didn't. So do we want to go back and state who's got a quorum and who doesn't?
So City Council has a quorum. Planning and Zoning Commission does not. NDC has a quorum. Correct, they only have 3, they need 4. BID does not, they only have 3, they need 4. And DNCA does. But according to legal, it is okay if they do not have a quorum, as we are not going to be taking any action.
Thank you very much. I was just curious, so thank you very much. Okay, Krista.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today on this beautiful afternoon. The fact that you all are here is, it's very evident that you are passionate and care about the downtown. This is an unprecedented meeting. We've never had all of these commissions and city council in the same room at one time. So thank you for being a part of this meeting. And so a little backstory on why we're here and how we got here is the Cushlands, Phil and Diane, they were contacted by the mayor's office, and we initiated a strategic planning process for the city as a whole to see what our united vision is and where we would like to see the city head in the future. And so as part ooh. It's coming from here. There we go. Okay. It's still on there. It's still coming through. It's still coming through on the computer. Oh, here we go. Okay, there we go. We got it. Sorry about that. So as I was saying, this process was initiated by the mayor's office to specifically see where we saw the city going in the future and where we would like to be. And really it came down to how do we get there? And that's where the Cushlands have really helped us to try to create that vision. And so first, we met with all of the city directors to see where their vision was for the city. We received their feedback, and we were able to put together an implementation framework. Now, the same process happened for the downtown as well. The Cushlands met with the BID and the DNCA to ask them again for their feedback on where they saw downtown Nampa going in the future and what they would like to see happen. Now, this meeting is a result of that feedback. We have now synthesized all of that and really put together where we would like to go. So we are in great hands with the Cushlands, and they will help lead a discussion so we can really build that vision for our downtown. So again, I would like to thank all of you for being here, and I'm going to hand it over to Phil and Diane Cushland.
Yes, so thank you very much, and thank all of you for attending this afternoon. This is a discussion, and it's intended to be an interactive discussion. And because of that, we've set up 2 rows of round chairs so that you can see each other and have a discussion. So those of you who've chosen to sit in the back, please move forward and be respectful of the people that you can have a discussion with, because being in the back, looking at their backs, is not going to work. So move forward if you tend to participate, please. Okay, thank you, all of you that moved forward. We appreciate that. So today we have a pretty rigorous agenda, and we're going to try to stay as efficiently as we possibly can. We're going to do a few bits of introduction and discussion about what you expect out of this meeting. Then Phil is going to talk about the first strategic effort that is underway, the implementation framework. And then we'll talk a little bit more in detail about the Downtown Action Plan as we have drafted it to date. And then board members from BID and DNCA and Honey, who have spent several meetings looking at what we have drafted will present what comments that they've made to us and some proposed edits to the original work. And then probably most significantly, we're going to spend a good chunk of time talking about how, now that we've got all of you in the room, how do we unify our efforts and move forward in a strategic manner? And then we'll have a few more minutes at the end for next steps, so we all know where we're going after the meeting today. Any questions about the agenda? Okay, so does everybody have a cell phone? This is a meeting in which you can take out your cell phone and use it. So get your cell phones out and take a scan of that CV code, or log in to slido.com, and then it will ask you for the meeting number, 3812233. Everybody getting in there? Anybody having problems? Okay, let's see if this is going to work. The first question, oh, you've already gotten there. You guys are great. What is your name? So we can have a little introductions. And this is kind of a test question to make sure the program's working. Everybody see their name? Who hasn't been able to get in yet? Anybody else not being able to get in? Okay. Who? Let's see, where is it? Somebody's gotten in, can you help? Raise your hand if you haven't been able to get in, and somebody who has got in, help that person. Anybody need help? Raise your hand.
What if somebody can't get in, Diane, do they have to get in if we continue to struggle? Is it necessary that everybody?
Yes, it would be very helpful if you did. Yeah. This is going to be much more fun and meaningful if you do.
Diane, Mitch, Nampa Chamber, I'm not going to because I'm leaving in just a minute.
I got it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on then, and still try. If you need help, raise your hand, and somebody help the person who's successful. Okay. So in 1 or 2 words, tell us your expectations for today's meeting. 1 or 2 words. We're going to try to do a word cloud here, so. Everybody got a response in?
My phone is too obsolete. Everyone has tried it.
Okay, it looks like learning is the most frequently response. There's a lot of collaboration in there and different wordings, which is terrific. Hearing perspective of others, hopefully that's high on everyone's list as well. Discussion, being informed, clarifying the future. It's certainly what we're trying to do today. So great, thank you all for that. I think that's, looks like we're all on the, kind of in the same ballpark in terms of where we're trying to do today. Okay, so let's move on, and the first thing is Phil's going to just give a little overview of the implementation framework, and for council and department heads, this is a little redundant, but there's probably a number of you who have not heard this part before. And as Krista said, we're doing two parallel efforts, but we want to certainly make sure that whatever we do for the downtown is consistent with this organizational implementation framework that Phil's going to discuss. So that's why it's important we all understand it.
Thank you, Diane, Mayor. When we were first engaged by the city, the direction to us was to not make new plans. Generally was a belief that the city had spent a number of years engaged in a variety of planning efforts, each of which had an implementation suggestion or suggestions that only some of which had actually been realized. And so our charge was to kind of gather up all of this good work that had been done over the years and try to construct a framework that would help the city in focusing its energy to actually bring the directives of those plans together into fruition. And so we did that. We spent a lot of time kind of pulling together work of the department heads in budget preparation, looking at the plans themselves that had various recommendations in them, and tried to make some sense out of those various documents and try to construct what we called a framework that would help the city keep track of what's being done and what isn't. So, where are we going here? What we did is met with the city council and had a conversation about primarily their previous strategic planning work and what it's moving ahead too soon. It moves ahead. I don't want it to move ahead. And so we talked quite a bit about what was in their vision and mission statement, and basically modified that a little bit and have met with the council again and verified that at this point there are 4 values that the council wanted to articulate as they look at their job with the city, and to focus on integrity, stewardship, collaboration, and innovation. So also at that point, we were asked to walk out into the future, into 2040, and take a look around and describe what we see. And what we have done is, again, brought that back and had a conversation with the council and the mayor in terms of what, again, they want to see this community become in the next several years. We acknowledged that the population is going to grow. Not everybody's totally enthusiastic about that prospect, but again, recognizing that the trends are such that people are coming here and we can't turn the spigot off. But generally, according to Compass, the regional planning agency, they're predicting that we're looking at an AMP of about 150,000 people in the year 2040. So that's a significant increase over what you have now. So something's going to change. The council talked quite a bit about the strong sense of identity that the city has, and they want to make sure that doesn't get degraded. And so I wanted to focus on that. They want to continue their classic investment in making sure that employment's available, education and services are here, and the infrastructure of the city is well maintained. And they want to primarily ensure the safe and healthy living conditions of people who live here. So that was kind of where they wanted to basically set as the goalpost for 2040. In trying to get there, we tried to put the various initiatives that the department heads and the plans had basically laid out for their work. And so we categorized them into a variety of what we call focus areas. One I think is very significant is community safety. We want to make sure that the city remains a safe and healthy place to be. Health is another significantly important thing, and that's not just the hospital. That includes, people's physical health. The water and sewer system is a great contributor to that. The building official plays in that role as well. Mobility is an issue that is constantly on the plate of the city in terms of not only moving cars around, but looking into the future, how are we going to have different mechanisms of moving about the community. Prosperity in terms of employment and so forth, how do we have a role in making sure that people who live here can in fact support their families and stay here into the future. We also talked about responsibility and how we involve the broader community into their legitimate role in a democratic society they get to play too. And so how do we facilitate those kinds of activities? And then basically underscoring all that is how do we make sure that our governance system is effective? And there's a lot of things there about how that plays out. And we won't go into the detail because it's pages and pages and pages that you'd all get up and leave. The thing that probably relates most to this group is there were a number of issues under prosperity that I'll kind of highlight here if I can find it. First one, we have a number of goals. One is downtown Nampa is revitalized, and that's the primary focus of our conversation here. Then goal 2 is Nampa's sense of identity and place is well known. Goal 3, the prosperity of the most vulnerable Nampa residents is raised. 4 is the airport supports the prosperity of the community. 5, powers granted to the Nampa Development Corporation in advancing community prosperity is maximized. 6, capacity at wastewater treatment plant is sufficient to support commercial and development growth. And 7, Nampa's quality of design is a stimulus for private investment. And those are the ones that we put under community prosperity. So all of those have little initiatives under each one that will continue further definition as we go forward. But after we met with the city council, we made a number of changes, not significant changes, but some, and we've wrapped those into the draft that you'll see here. So again, this is part of our effort and collaboration and involvement to make sure that all of us are kind of on the same page here moving into the future. So questions about where we've gone so far? Yeah.
Are those supporting points available on slide?
The question is, are the supporting slide points available?
I'm sure we can get them to anybody here that wants it. That
So an initial document was emailed out to everybody. So you should have that initial framework, but after this meeting is over, we will send those updated copies as well as notes from today's meeting.
it's important that you have them as well. Anything else? Okay.
Thank you, Phil. So now we'll launch into the Downtown Nampa Action Plan that we drafted about a month ago, and it's been out for review. I know the BID and the DNCA has spent some time reviewing it, and after I present our draft, then Honey and others can go through some of the suggested changes that they've made. So as Phil mentioned, we reviewed lots of reports and took the mayor's direction to heart that we were not going to do another study and reinvent the wheel because there's plenty of resources already available. So I think we looked at over 30 different documents or initiatives, plans, and policies going back really to 20 years or so. You also have adopted standards and regulations that are in place right now, so we looked at those. There's been a series of revisions to the downtown Nampa street standards, and I think that's continuously being reviewed and revised as time changes. There's been lots and lots of reports, informational reports, some of which evolved into some direction and some policies. There's certainly the ongoing study of what to do about through traffic through downtown that's happening right now. And then you've got a number of ongoing programs, all the events that go downtown, the farmers market, the holiday events, the third Thursday. You've got ongoing beautification efforts, the lighting, public art. So those are all acknowledged as things that are happening today. So after reviewing all of that, and we started with the DNCA's vision statement, this is what we came up with. Downtown Nampa is a family-friendly and attractive destination for a number of activities, and it's a gathering place for the entire community, and it's connected to the community. You can start to hear some of the same themes that were in the implementation framework. It's cherished for its place in history, it's the soul of the city, and it's a future transportation hub going back to its past, where it was a transportation hub that can be its future. And as you're starting to see, a neighborhood with residential housing. And this is the critical line and why we're here today, is that the vision is supported by the results-oriented efforts of numbers of groups and individuals, public, nonprofit, volunteer, and private investors who work toward these common goals. So that's the draft vision. And I'd like you all to go to your Slido right now and answer this question. You only get one choice. How well do you think this vision reflects the future for the downtown Nampa? It's a home run, it's in the ballpark, it's a bunt in the field, or it's a strikeout. So those are your choices. And I hope those are obvious what they mean. I don't like using sports analogies, but they seem to work. All right, so here's the responses we're getting. Everybody, I'll give you a couple more minutes. Everybody get a chance? Okay, we're going to hear from the BID and DNCA in a couple of minutes, and I know they have some edits that you want to hear about. But those of you who weren't part of that discussion, anybody want to speak up who thought it was just a bunt or a home run? Or please, don't be shy. Thank you, sir.
I'm not shy.
I know, we've interacted before.
I'm Victor Rodriguez, Napa City Council.
Yeah.
So what I put down is a bunt because we have the several different groups working in a different direction, along with the cities working in another direction, even though the vision is the same. It boils down to this and where we're going. However, there's a cutoff and there's a break between the city and the organizations. So, and the reason, maybe there's a reason why there's a disconnect, it's because we're not authorized. We're not the authority. The city's not the authority of how to handle downtown.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm thinking that if we had more meetings like what we're having today, the same direction, the same vision would result in a positive issue or positive result. That's what I'm thinking, and that's what I'm saying. We've been talking about downtown for the last 30 years, and it's the same. Nothing's changed, other than some good stories have come in, and we've helped. The city of Nampa has helped them a lot in terms of on-street dining and celebrations and parties. But those are not the functions that we need to increase revenue. Those are just part-time revenues. Maybe I'm way off base here.
No, you're
know.
actually providing us a really great segue into some discussion we're going to have in a few minutes, so
Okay,
thank you.
yeah, and I think that the Development Corporation has the ability to help more. I think the city has the ability to help more. It's just that I think we all get together to form a different plan or a good plan, and this is what you all are doing right now. So I'm hoping to see that my bunt's going to turn into a home run.
Good, okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else at this point? Okay, let's move further then. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Just passing it around. So as part of this action plan, we attempted to capture what were the essential descriptors of the downtown, and then to formulate some categories under those that we then can create some action steps. So the first one was vibrancy, that we want the downtown to be vibrant, and we can do that through programming, increasing the number of events. We can do that by incentivizing vacant land and better utilizing some of the public properties that are downtown. Restore the PICS or some other building that becomes a catalyst for additional development. So the PICS we just used because that's the one most frequently mentioned, but it could be something else. But there's a need for a catalyst building, and you see that over and over again in downtowns where a building comes in and it's just the stimulus for a lot more redevelopment. And then Phil and I both strongly feel, and there's policy direction in the comprehensive plan, and you have one of your first sites being developed now as housing. What a better way to create vitality in your downtown, a built-in market for your local businesses than to have housing there. And communities across this country their downtowns are being restored through the development of housing. Go look at Front and Myrtle in Boise as just an example. So we really think housing is an important ingredient in vibrancy. The second characteristic is attractive downtown. And there's a lot of good ongoing programming that's happening related to that in terms of the facade improvement, the streetscape plan, which you're reviewing now, maintaining, marketing, recruiting, all the things the chamber does in terms of business, and then all the work that's being done in terms of beautifying and landscaping and public art and lighting. So those all contribute to attractiveness. And then being connected. And again, this is a theme you saw in the overall city organization, improving those connections that are not necessarily motorized. And we know we've been struggling with the through traffic for a long time. We know we're studying it now. That's going to be a long-term solution. But maybe in the interim, we need to look at how can we improve the circulation and connectiveness of non-motorized ways of travel, bicycles and pedestrians primarily, and all those other wheeled things that are coming about. And so that might mean allowing for multimodal use of downtown sidewalks. That's been mentioned a couple of times in some of the recent health and connected reports. And then a big piece is educating the public on parking availability, parking utilization, managing your whole, this is a tremendous resource that you have in terms of the parking garages and on-street parking. And so creating a better system of understanding and communicating where that parking is. you want to say, he's the parking guru. Do you want to say anything? Okay. And then, again, focusing on pedestrian solutions to the through traffic issue that you have. And then honoring heritage, you have this tremendous asset with the depot, the historic depot there, promoting all that facility as well as the beautiful historic buildings that you have, strengthening incentives for preservation. There's a lot of, there was a preservation report done in 2018 that had a lot of good recommendations about the financial incentives that are out there for private development to use to save those buildings. Improving signage and wayfinding of the historic places, and then continuing to explore processes to preserve and restore some of this historic buildings. Again, that preservation report had some very good, as well the comp plan has some very good direction in that regard. And then finally, and kind of why we're here today, is how do you create the organizational resilience to keep this plan moving forward? And we see some key elements to that is finding permanent funding for the Main Street program, formalizing and expanding relationships, and I think that gets at, Councilman, some of the things that you were talking about. Optimize urban renewal resources. You've got a district that covers most of some of the downtown, and there's some resources there that could be applied in various ways. And then to keep us all on tap is to create an annual sort of reporting process, an opportunity to celebrate the successes of the year, and to continue to tinker at the direction for the future. This, you know, Phil and I are going to bring this to you. It's a one-shot deal, but this is a living kind of a document that needs to be continually reviewed over time. So any questions on any of those? Then we'll go to our next poll. It's the same question. When you look at these 5 descriptors, how well did they define the actions needed to achieve the vision of downtown? Again, a home run in the ballpark, a butt in the infield, or a strikeout. Thank you. Good luck with the game. Okay. Everybody had a chance? All right. Well, it looks like there's some more tweaking of those that needs to be done from the responses, more so than the vision statement. So. Everybody get a chance? Okay, anybody want to comment on their response to that question? Anybody in a bunt? Okay. All right, well, let's move on. We'll keep that in mind. Looks like we are up with DNCA and EID recommendations. And yeah, so that you can be on the mic, honey, it's best. And I can tap the screens.
Thank you so much. First off, I think I'm just really excited that there's so many people in the same room that really want to see a vibrant downtown. And so even though we all may not agree exactly how we get there, we all want the same thing. We want the downtown to be the living room of our community, where people go and enjoy themselves and enjoy their families and have a good time. So I love that we all have that in common. So when the DNCA and the BID, when we worked together and we reviewed everything that the Cushlands put together, I think the most important thing to recognize is we were looking at it from the perspective of the Downtown Nampa Community Association and from the perspective of the BID. And from that perspective, there's only so many things that we can control. So when we kind of looked down this as well, we really tried to focus on the things that we could do. You know, how could we help make downtown a vibrant, beautiful place for people to be? So when we looked at the vision statement, you'll see some of our red comments along that line. You'll see that when we worked together with the DNCA and the BID, we took the word family-friendly out. And I want you to know that when we took that out, that doesn't mean that we don't think families should be downtown. We want families downtown, we want kids downtown, but we couldn't all define what family-friendly meant. And that we felt like it's a catchphrase and it's more of a political phrase than an actual something that we want in our vision, because we don't all agree with what family-friendly means. So therefore, we took that particular statement out. We also took out the word recreation for the time being because we couldn't figure out where recreation fit into downtown either. So we just kind of took out some of these key words that were in there that we couldn't figure out, well, how does somebody do something recreational in downtown Nampa? So we took that out. And then we also just didn't quite understand the future transportation hub, and maybe through dialogue later, that can be, you know, we might understand that better but for the time being, from the DNCA and the BID perspective, we kind of look at downtown and how does a hub actually happen in downtown Nampa. So the other thing that we did is when we looked at all of the, I don't know what you guys call those the value statements with the little squares, we really looked at it from the perspective of the DNCA and the BID and our 30,000-foot view on what we could or cannot help with. So is it okay if we move to the next one? Okay, perfect. I think that's it. Okay. So we're in complete agreement that we want downtown to be a very vibrant place for people to hang out and to be. We just made some slight changes based on what we could do to help. And that was kind of the angle that we took. So we can help create engaging events and programs. We could help collaborate with outside organizations, and we can assist in the creation of destination attractions. And I want you to know, like when we look at your squares, like the housing and stuff, we can't be more excited about downtown living because we know that that is very important to creating a vibrant downtown. The other things that we just really added a little bit about is on attractiveness, the things that we can and can't control. So the things that we could help with is educating property owners and collaborating with property owners. We could advocate and support for the streetscape plan. We want to work hand in hand with economic development in the city in maintaining market and recruiting desired businesses. And we really do, as everybody want, a really safe, attractive, and clean downtown. And we can work hand in hand with the city on some of those efforts. As far as connectedness goes, we, from our perspective, from the perspective of the DNCA and the BID, there wasn't a lot of things that we could do as far as the transportation piece goes, but there was a lot of things that we could do to connect people. And so that's what we really focused on when we were working on our action plan, is how do we connect people and how do we get people in downtown? So developing strong communication methods with stakeholders. And when we say that, kind of referring back to what Victor said earlier, you know, we don't have a lot of opportunities. This is a really unique opportunity that we have, that we're all in the same room at the same time. Super excited about that. But like, where do we move going forward from this? Like, how do we keep that communication opened between the BID and the DNCA and NDC and the city? Like, how do we improve our communication where we all really do understand what each person is doing and their piece of the puzzle? So that's one of the things that we feel really strongly that we need to really work on, is platforms for solid communication between all of these entities. So we strategically put the word in there, strong communication methods, because we know we need a system in order to communicate with each other. We want to collaborate and connect with all organizational stakeholder groups as often as we can. We don't know what that looks like yet, but I think this is a great step one of getting all of us in the same room at the same time, having the same discussion on how we want to move downtown forward. With what the Cushling said, we really want to improve the signage and the wayfinding, and we want to enhance the pedestrian experience and ease of access to parking. And when we say that, we know that parking will always be one of those things that people are never truly happy with, but we can do everything we can as far as wayfinding and stuff so people know where to park. And along with what the Cushling said, we really want to honor our heritage. You know, when we look at the vision statement, you know, we came from a transportation hub, like you said. So we really want to do everything we can to honor our heritage, but also move us forward as we grow in population with 140, 150,000 people over the next 20 years. What people coming in here want may change over time a little bit, and we want to really be thinking forward of, you know, what do people want in the future as well, and not just today. And then as far as organizational resilience, we really focused on, we agree we need permanent funding for the Main Street program. We want to really work on, as the DNCA, we really want to focus on our relationship between the city, the NDC, and the BID, like what can we do together as a team in order to make Nampa the most vibrant, wonderful place to be. We want to help businesses in downtown seek out and optimize state and federal and private resources so they can do the things they'd like to do. And we want to come up with a really good method of establishing an annual reporting process for what we're doing, so that way the other stakeholders know exactly what the DNCA and the BID have been doing. And we want to come up with a really good reporting process so you guys know what we're doing. That's it. Okay. Any questions for me? Yep, so we also created an action step for ourselves. Mayor, do you mind if I peek at that? Thank you, I appreciate that. So what we did was we took the things that that we worked on together as a group, and we kind of came up with an action plan. We defined for our action plan quick wins of things that we could accomplish in the next 12 months or less. We also created what we thought could be accomplished in the next 12 to 24 months, and also long-term wins of 24 plus months. I think it's important to add as well, when we were working with the BID, they pulled businesses in, so it wasn't just the board, it was businesses in downtown Nampa that contributed to our action plan. So it wasn't just a group of leaders. We tried to incorporate as many people in the community as we could when we worked on that. I don't know, I think this went out in the email that everybody got prior to this, but there's a lot on here, so I'll just kind of highlight some of the little things. Is we know that the more people we get involved, the more solid our action plan is going to be. So our number one objective is getting all of our committees up and going. So we'll have a promotion committee, an organizational committee, a design committee. I'm missing one of the committee. Economic vitality, thank you, Marie. And those committees will be with business people, community people. I think the most important thing to remember about the DNCA is the word community, and that we are trying to pull as many people from the community into the DNCA, sitting on committees so they can be a part of this process. Wayfinding has already been talked about. I don't want to miss anything that's really important. Some of the more intermediate wins that we would really like to see is really the development of community space with playground, grass, splash pads, Wall Street project, maybe giving art that is rooted in our history. There's been some examples of like train lights at crosswalks. Some of those kinds of fun things have come up in discussions. And do you want to say anything like from off the action plan? Anybody think I missed any big points off the action plan? Go for it, Angie.
Everyone is going to regret that. So Angie Davis, DNCA. So Matt and Mark and I sat on the subcommittee to do the visions, rewrite the vision statement and the action plan. So what I would say is, as Honey was going through the vision statement and our changes, I don't think everybody understood that some of the changes that they showed up there they don't reflect what we had asked for. So just as a point of clarity, for instance, I think they said something about engaging events, increasing the amount of people at events and programs. Well, I think that's a wonderful, non-tangible process to go through because we don't know how many people are at these events in the first place. So we took kind of the clarity of that out of there and just said, we want more events and more programs. I think another one was like on the connected, understanding the city's coming to it from connecting vehicles and buses and bikes and things like that. We're talking about, and Honey hit this, is we're talking about connecting to departments. We're connecting to the Department of Economic Development, understanding what's going in, understanding where that project is, that the residential project is. Most of us don't really actually know where we're at this point. After we wrote our letter of support, we haven't heard another word. And so we're really trying to get more involved in just simple communication channels. It doesn't have to be big, hairy ordeals, just something super light. There was a couple other things too. I think anyone who knows me personally knows that historic places in the city are of the vital most importance, but they're not the only thing in downtown. And so we don't want wayfinding just pointing to historic places. We want wayfinding pointing to parking lots and to restaurants and to the PICs when it gets redone and all those kinds of things. So we took some of those subtleties out that were more specific in the Cushland plan. And it was kind of hard because you couldn't really compare the two together. So other than Matt, Mark, do you have anything else?
Matthew Lind, BID. So the one thing I would like to highlight is, as Honey mentioned, for us, one of the main drivers in our discussion and decision-making process was what are those things we can have effect on? Because it's been made quite clear that the resources are very limited. City budget is limited. They can only be involved in a certain capacity. Likewise, urban renewal only has a very specific amount of resources. So to see things on these strategic plans where there's no foreseeable, tangible way of achieving them seem to be not necessarily the best way forward. So what we really wanted to do, I'll underline it again, is say what can we actually do and accomplish. So when there were items that named specific buildings downtown, well, that's out of our control. We wanted to just take that back a step and say, look, we don't need a specific building. We need destination attractions. We don't need specific events. We just need to have destination events to happen. So it really was moving it into a realm that we could control and then translating it into action steps. So hopefully that's clear in the way we edited everything.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Comment. This is Mayor Debbie, and first of all, I just want to say thank you. I love the work that you guys put into it and the ideas that you brought forward. I think they're excellent. On family friendly was put in there by the BID board members back when we were pulling the BID board together. Those were the words that they suggested. But anyway, so I just say that's where that came from initially, but the board has changed, right? So you have different board members. But excellent job. I really appreciate it. So my question is, how then are you going to take this and incorporate it into, because you followed the framework, right? Are you going to, Cushlands, are you guys going to incorporate this into your document? And that's the direction. Yeah. Okay. I'd be glad to do that. Okay. So I think then what I hear, because you just said if that's the direction, And so then for this group, which is the broader body, do we need to come to consensus that, yes, we support these recommended changes? Because I don't have the original and this one side by side. I think you said on many of these, the wording was only slightly changed. So you'd almost have to go back. But it sounds like they're pretty close, just slight wording changes.
Yeah, some of it is slight, and some of them we took off completely because we felt like we couldn't control it. So like, for example, like, let's say restore the PICs. We took it off completely because we have no power, so we got rid of it. So that doesn't mean that we wouldn't want to see the PICs restored at some point. It just means that we couldn't tangibly make a difference in it, so we took it off.
Right, and you changed it to identify, right, the destination. Last comment, honey, you're new. You did a phenomenal job of articulating that within the length of time and listening and pulling it together. Good job.
Thank you.
Jordan Baker, BID. Just curious why it was identified to remove things from the vision that the BID DNCA had no control of. Maybe that's an obvious answer there, but it does concern me that we're removing some things which are meaningful, and where do they go once we remove them? Do they just go into the dustbin?
I think I'd like to say that that's one of the reasons why we're having this meeting today, because the fact that the DNCA took this document and looked at it through their lens, and we are trying to expand that lens to say, okay, they have a tremendous part to play in this effort, but so does the city, and so does a lot of other groups. And so we're looking for a unified vision, a unified action, some of which they're going to take on, some of which other people will take on. So that's where I come to some issue with the edits that they made. And I think for them, that was perfectly fine. But this document is tended to be not just their document, but all of your document.
Well, then I'm concerned that maybe their take on it isn't as encompassing as it should be. I appreciate, and I am a BID member, the things that we can and can't control. But if it's a unifying document, I think we should add in all of the things that the DNCA and the BID can't control, and we wish for, and we want to have change, and we need city partnership with, and just stack that whole, just add that all back in and more. Because that's really the dream, you know, what the future is more than just what the BID and the DNCA can control. We want to advocate for the city to change, make some changes, I would think, so thank you.
That was kind of the direction that we got, so I appreciate that. Okay? So.
Done with me?
Yeah, I think so,
Okay.
if you're done with your, Yes. Okay. All right, so what we really want to spend a chunk of time now on, and is this, how do we unify our efforts? This is a great segue comment that you made toward the desired vision. And the more that Phil and I talked about this project, the more it became some organizational sustainability that's needed. And you just spoke to the reason for that. So we started with this graphic, and I apologize to any group that you don't feel that we've gotten the most important responsibilities you had, but we intended through this to identify what were the major contributions that these agencies and groups were making to the downtown. And the bolded ones are the ones that are being done by more than one group. So just, I'm being left-handed today. Let's start on the right side with the city, because there's the most expansive. They certainly provide a lot of administrative support to other entities that are working in the downtown. The city provides direct funding, supporting activities and improvements that are downtown. They help in programming. The library has programming. There's other events that are using the public spaces. So the city is in the programming business. They provide funding for enhancements. They certainly make investments, both in terms of what we think of as infrastructure, roads and sidewalks improvements, as well as, what was the other investment we talked about? investment of your expertise and your resources. They're in the business of maintenance. They have a whole section in the Community Development Department devoted to economic development. A couple of people that spend a lot of their time on that. The city owns a property downtown. They work at preservation of the historic structures. They have regulations in place that guide the zoning and the development standards, and they certainly are enforcers of those and other health, safety, and general welfare laws that affect the downtown. So the BID they fund enhancements, they do maintenance, they do direct funding. The Historic Society is certainly there to preserve historic structures. They do education, they do programming. You have the NDC doing redevelopment, economic development, direct funding again, and investments. And the Chamber doing marketing, business advocacy. I think they do programming and they do economic development and their attraction of new businesses. And then the DNCA is the Main Street program. They do marketing, they do programming, they do enhancements, they work on preservation, they do economic development, and they do administrative support for a lot of the efforts downtown. So what do you see when you look at this graphic? And again, I apologize if I didn't capture everything, but what do you see? Anybody? Yeah.
Matthew Lind, BID. I guess I would ask a preliminary question before going into this. So I sat around a table with a number of you a few months ago when the city brought in Ed McMahon to talk to us about some of the downtown reconsideration and concepts. And as we sat down around the table at the end there, several of us asked the question, who in the room, because we have this overlapping matrix here, who in the room is supposed to own the vision for downtown, to really develop, promote, and be the champion for what is the collective vision and the collaborative goals? And the answer that was given and arrived at is that is the role of the DNCA, the Main Street program. So that your closing comments on the last section, combined with where I see this discussion going, makes me want to ask the question, is there a shift in that answer? Is there a shift in policy here?
Well, I wasn't in that room and I don't know the context of that comment, so I'd have a hard time answering that question. I think I know Ed McMahon very well, and you know, if he was the one answering that question, I think he's certainly an advocate for the Main Street program. He's one of the originators of it, and he's a great supporter of it. So I think he does feel that's an important organization. But
I think you might be misunderstanding my question.
Yeah, I don't
so the question was asked of the body politic, not of Ed McMahon.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Who is the owner of the vision for downtown? And everyone sat around the table and said that is the DNCA. It seems at this moment that is being called into question. For instance, the closing comments from the last section seem to say that someone else should be owning that vision and promoting it, because the DNCA's comments were to a certain degree brushed aside as not the most weighty or necessary ones for consideration. Is it the opinion of, once again, the body politic here today, that the leader and owner of the vision for our collaborative goals in the downtown community, the DNCA? And where are we going from here? Is someone else going to be that leader, that advocate, that champion, the person who coordinates the resources? Because as we go into organizational resilience, the question will remain, which organization needs to become resilient?
And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. We're going to talk directly on that point in a few minutes.
Right, so
Sure. Yeah. No, I look forward to hearing what you're. Yeah.
So I appreciate your question, because I think it's an important question, but I also want to hear what you have to say on that you just said you're going to discuss it. Because one thing I appreciate about the Cushlands, they've been here and they've done this with downtown Boise for a long number of years. And so I do look forward to hearing, as we discuss that, what your comments are and what you have to say on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the DNCA is, I mean, the city's got a lot of things to do. The chamber has a lot of other things to do. But you are the one organization that's focused on the downtown. There's no doubt about that. And so the fact that you should live and breathe the vision more than anybody else is certainly true. But I think you need to share that vision. You can't go off with a vision that is distinct from what the city's vision is for the downtown and the community as a whole. You rely on them. You rely on other groups as well. So I think it's a cohabitation. I mean, you are the point group, but you certainly can't meet your objectives without the support and coordination and communication of all those other groups. That would be my response. And I think as we've gotten into this, we've realized there is a gap in terms of the organizational makeup, in terms of what everybody's, I think Honey mentioned it, communications, coordination, overlapping responsibility, which is what we're trying to show here. So how can we move forward and work more efficiently? And that's really the question. So we've said, okay, we need to think about the success. And we've got this action plan in place, but there needs to be another piece in this, which is how do we organize ourselves? How do we communicate? How do we formalize our relationships?
Can
Yeah. Oh, okay. To get success. So it's both of these ingredients that are important. We focused on the action plan. Now in the next few minutes, I hope we can talk about this second middle piece. I'm sorry, Marie.
I just have a comment, Marie Baker, DNCA. I think it's a yes and. So as I'm sitting here listening to everything, and thank you both Jordan and Matt for your comments, because really it's not either or, it's yes and. The DNCA can certainly be the holder and the caster of vision and the champion, but it's going to take every single organization in this room to make that happen. And there are things that we cannot do, but we need other people to come alongside us and do it as well.
Thank you for saying it much more eloquently than I was. Thank you. Any other comments and questions? You had anything to add? My partner's leaving me out. Okay. All right, so thinking about this, and just from our experience, here's a couple of options that we want to put out and see how everybody feels about these. The first one is to formalize the relationships you already have, to really sit down and come to some, what do you call it, memorandum of agreements. Now, I know that sounds kind of bureaucratic, but I think you need to say, okay, what's our relationship to the other entities that are involved? And how do we share resources? What kind of representation do we have or not have in these other groups? The second option to think about is to merge a couple of the functions that are now happening. And the one that seems to come to mind the most is the BID and the DNCA. And I know there's a couple of you that serve on both those bodies. I think staff is spending a lot of money, a lot of time and effort attending both of those bodies. There's a lot of repetition that happens in those meetings, although they have certainly distinct functions. But to maybe figure out a way you can merge at least those two bodies together. And it's been done, I think, where's Amber? She's done some research. It's been done effectively. You want to speak to that at all? Or you've done some research on it? Yeah.
So, Amber Bothwell, Economic Development. I reached out to Jerry Miller, Idaho's Main Street Coordinator. I reached out to several other municipalities to research how their different downtown organizations coordinate and collaborate, because one thing I've noticed since working in my position is the amount of redundancy. We have multiple board meetings a month with very similar, if not identical, agenda items, lots of overlapping members, and there's just got to be a better way to collaborate. So I know up in Coeur d'Alene, they have their BID and DNCA with the same board members in a same meeting each month. So the DNCA and the BID has identical board members, and then they have a BID agenda item to discuss BID fees. So stuff like that, there's just different ways to coordinate and get all parties involved. I know we took a step in the right direction when the DNCA had their board members composed of representatives from all the different entities. So I know they have a chamber rep, a city rep, a DNCA rep, BID rep, and an NDC rep on the Main Street Board, which is a great step towards the right direction, but we definitely need to find a way to eliminate all these redundant meetings and come together a little bit more collaboratively.
Okay, thanks. So, and then the third option is, and this is done in other communities, create a coordinating entity with representatives from all of the organizations that would meet on a regular basis, that would, for example, you have events being planned by the library, you have events being planned by DNCA, certainly the chamber, you have events being planned for Lloyd Square through Park and Recreation. It would be nice to be able to say, okay, here's a group that's doing all of the events, they meet on a regular basis, they coordinate what resources are needed to hold those events, they make sure there's not overlapping conflicts with dates, and you market all of the events, not this is the library's event or this is a city event, but this is the downtown event. So there's one platform for all those things to happen. So that's another option, yes.
Can I make
ma'am.
just a
Yeah.
quick comment? This is the mayor. And so, needless to say, I was involved when we were creating the Main Street Board and identifying all those different seats. And one of the intents was that all the organizations were represented on the DNCA board because that was the unifying organization. And so I think there's someone from Historic Preservation. We've got several BID members. So yes, there is an overlap, but there was an intentional overlap because Main Street was the organization that was representative. So the chamber is on the Main Street board. There's someone from the city on the Main Street board. There's Historic Preservation. There needs to be somebody from possibly the train depot, but that hasn't been formalized, I don't think. I can't remember. So anyway, so that was the intent. And then maybe we could, with the library, because it's a good point as far as events, but if Main Street has representation, then they would be the one marketing downtown. That was the intent. So if we got away with the merging of the BID, because in my mind, the BID has a little different function. But somebody tell me if I'm wrong.
If Matthew Lind, BID, I would just like to note number 10 on our action plan is actually the assimilation of those two boards. The two committees, not the two boards.
Which committees?
BID, DNCA.
Well, those are official, so the BID is an official entity. That isn't an easy structure that you just dissolve. And so I question if that is a wise thing to do.
Excuse me, may I? I have reached out to downtown Boise. They have that similar structure to get guidance on exactly how they handle it. Because you're right, BID is an assessment district that we absolutely want to stay in play. What we're looking at, and I think it's the intent of the recommendation, is that we don't dissolve one. It's just that we merge together to do our business together, keeping respective priorities in place, but we do it simultaneously. We want to do it legally, appropriately, and keep the funding mechanism in place. And I have an appointment in a couple weeks with the downtown Main Street person who they've done the exact same thing. So hopefully we'll get that in place. Hopefully that answers that question.
Good, yeah, good ideas. I would agree with that because they're two separate functions that need to function separately, but let's get rid of the redundancy. Good idea.
And another thing that you heard Honey mention, Main Street's developed, there's 4 specific committees, and they actually have a process and a way that we can involve everybody for the communication. So, for example, the promotion committee would be the place, it wouldn't be the board, where all these organizations can be a part of and all their events can be part of it. So there's a strategy, and it is in that outline as well, of how we grow those committees and involve people in the community to do this type of collaborative work.
Thank you, Marie. Other comments? you want to share that, councilperson?
So I have a question on the formalize, because it sounds like we've talked a little bit about the merging piece and the overlapping role between DNCA and BID, because they do need to be separate, but merging them into a meeting, and that the coordinating entity is DNCA, and that's kind of the intent of that structure was that. But back to formalize, to me, that is an action that we need to do, is to formalize. We do have MOUs, but we might want to come back and revisit our MOUs at the conclusion of this, as you suggested, to look at the responsibilities of the existing organizations and where they overlap, et cetera, even though we've just signed some MOUs. Angie, I would love to hear what you're thinking.
So we have an MOU in process with the BID. So I also, I apologize that people are having redundant meetings, but that's the city requiring that person to be at both meetings. We certainly talk about different things in the BID. They're the funding mechanism for their own beautification, safety, those kinds of things. So I have experience working with both the BID and a community association. The Pioneer Square Association takes on the Pioneer Square BID, and they administrate the BID's wishes and program goals and those kinds of things while doing all of the programming for the community association. So it's very, very easy to do. It's not hard. And we're probably, 80% done with the MOU and the BID. So we're a lot further than this.
That's really exciting to hear. Thank you, Angie.
As I sit here and listen to the conversation, which I appreciate, all the voices that I've heard, I'm trying to figure out why I'm here. As a city councilman, you know, the emphasis appears to be more on the downtown development, which I totally am support of. And, you know, all the efforts are important to hear. But from a vision and mission statement standpoint, we went through this as a city council about 8 years ago and developed the current one. So we've been down this path once before, and I think 10 years from now, there'll be a completely new vision and mission statement, because the young people today have different terms. Just like we talked about teamwork versus collaboration, the next term might be something else. But as an architect and someone that deals with the development community, a lot of what we depend upon as far as for these redevelopment efforts are the developers. I'm not sure how many developers are in this room or even a part of the dialoguing that's taking place. And I mentioned this back in 1985. They had a RUDAT study in Boise, which determined the direction that the city of Boise was going to go, to focus more on an entertainment and business downtown, vertical high-rise type community. Residential came after the fact. The emphasis was to try to get residential moved out around the perimeter and then to develop the art in historic districts, concentric rings that are in downtown Boise. We've kind of got that already in play here in Nampa. We've focused on a few things that would be nice to develop, like the Indian Creek, if we could open it up, but then the fact that it's on the north side of the tracks is an issue. So when I start, you know, I listen to these conversations and I wonder why I'm here, because I want there to be a focus on downtown. Are we talking about something that's even more rural and urban transitional? Or is it only urban zones that we're talking about in the downtown core? If that's what it is, then, you know, I just need to know that. But if we're talking about vision and mission statements, is that for the whole, is that for 100,000+ people? Or is it just the downtown businesses that we're focusing on with our efforts? And the last thing that I'd say is I'm more of a visual guy. I like to see concepts put in place. I've been a part of those efforts in a charrette process in the past, where you can put together ideas and concepts. And Rodney's department's done a really good job of looking at development areas outside of our downtown core and how that we can develop those areas and try to maintain the character of our rural history along with the development as it grows, so it's systematic and smart growth. So I'm saying a lot of things, but I'm just trying to find my place in this conversation so that I know what I can give that would be helpful. If we're only going to be talking about the semantics of what terms we should be using in a vision and mission statement, without getting to that, again, I'm just I'm a visual guy. I like to see color and shape. So if we're going to get to that point in time.
I do have a comment. So when I hear about, what was it, 2 months ago, Honey and Matt, that I finally reached out to Honey and talked with her. I didn't realize what all was going on in downtown. Shame on me for not knowing. But I will never say that again. I'll guarantee you that. So also when I talked with Matt, and then we had a meeting with the mayor and saw the different directions that we were all headed. Well, here's already a break in the chain that Randy just touched on. The break in the chain is that the DNCA and the BID has their goals and missions and visions. We as the city council and with the planning and zoning are given directives by the state statutes of businesses coming into Nampa, especially downtown. Now, whether we approve or not of those new businesses coming into town may or may not coincide or agree with your vision. And we never hear from you. And I was telling Honey the other day, I said, look, in order for me to know exactly what you are all up to and how it fits in with our direction of business and revenue and family and all this other stuff, it's hard to realize exactly how we can make that work. So planning and zoning has a whole different set of rules that actually we follow. And then the statutes, that is. And then we follow the same statutes, but we may come out differently with a different direction. We may not approve what planning and zoning did. So are we interfering with the DNCA and BID? Yeah, we are. Because we don't know which direction you all are headed. So that's a very important part when we want to formalize, merge, and create. Because how can I create along with you when I don't know what your direction is? I have my own plans of what we should be, and what I reached out to Matt and Honey, and of course, I think they're the vision group here, not us. So when we say we want to revitalize Nampa, I hate to tell you, but we're not. We think we're doing it directly, trying to help, but it's really a struggle for me. But I think we've done what we can. So that's just my opinion.
If I could go ahead and then Wendy. Well, I just want to say, unfortunately, council may not be as aware on all levels, but staff really is connecting. And so when we were working on our ordinances in council, and this is why it's not, and I use this, years ago I learned the principle, it's not about me, it's we, right? Because we can only be successful if we work together. And I feel like downtown's moving forward in a beautiful way. We've got great people doing great work, and I think that this is just the next step in the process. But even Angie, what you just said, you're even down the road further than even we realize in certain things. And we have, and just Angie alone, your expertise that you're lending us is phenomenal because you've been in this space and you've done that. And so I feel like we're in a really good place because we have amazing people, we're getting the structure in place. But staff is aware because, for example, the streetscape plan, that plan was put in place a number of years ago, good, bad, or indifferent, because we stood around and had a talk about it the other day and how challenging it is with that one tree. And you know what? We'll figure out that. Well, I think we've already figured out the tree. Sometimes you've got a plan and you've got to adjust the plan. But without a plan, it's difficult, right? So we've got the plans in place. We made great changes to our ordinances recently that impacted our downtown, and we actually did, I believe, have a meeting, and we engaged the downtown BID on those ordinance changes. Vacant building code. I've had a number of discussions, and I know these guys have heard it, saying, please come advocate, and they have, and they've written letters, like on the vacant building code that we have got to address. Unfortunately, there's some legal pieces to it, so while we're not done in any sense of the word, there is a lot of collaboration and discussion that's going on, and staff, there has to be, because city council approves ordinance. When we talked about how many bars do we allow in downtown, we had a lengthy discussion about that. I don't know if you guys remember that, which definitely impacts downtown. We approve alcohol licenses, right? 300 feet. I mean, there's a lot that happens at the city council level, and then it's really important that the BID and DNCA weighs in when those are before city council. So that was kind of long and windy. I'm sorry I went ahead of you.
That's quite all right. Wendy Rhodes, Chair of the NDC Board. And to tag along with what Mayor is saying and what also Councilman Victor is saying, but first, to touch on, Diane, what you said, what you asked on those, that first slide with all the bubbles, you said, what do you see here? Well, I see a lot of very, very passionate individuals in each of those entities that want to see a better downtown. I love the fact that DNCA and BID owns that and that they're conjoining their efforts. NDC, however, there's a few of those, if you look, have that direct funding opportunity. We get things brought to us, but only specific things when they really need them. If we knew what the wants were, if we knew how we could help make it better, we would want to participate with that. And I think I speak for everyone nodding their head, the four that are in here, the quorum. How's that? I'll make mention. But we want a better Nampa. So how can we help you? And that's why I'm here, I guess. I want the collaboration, but I'm hearing a lot of conversation. But we really want to move forward with this, and please help us understand if we can get those kind of lists or wants and needs. And then Hadi has it. Hadi, that's a Claudia and Honey, but I have one there.
Oh, there I am. So this is Honey with the DNCA. So I think, like, for the DNC's perspective, we would love to provide you that list. I guess later on, let's have I just need to know how we do that, since I'm still new enough that, I'll need that instruction. How do we communicate with you on the things that we hope that you could help us with?
And I will absolutely lean towards Cliff, some of the staff who have worked directly with that to see, because there are restrictions on what we can provide, but we want to provide how we can to better our community, because that's really, we want people to stay here. We want them to live here. We want them to play here. So anyway, Claudia wanted to say something.
Claudia, NDC. I guess being part of the NDC, I'd like to see growth and development. So one of my questions, and I guess some of my concerns are, the downtown tends to be tight, small. We were talking about growth, and we're talking about 100 and some plus persons coming to this, into our town. My question would be, could we look at possibly as a group and as a, expanding the downtown? And I know we talked about, like Councilman had said, Randy said, the tracks are stopping us from developing. I think we can improve. I think we can get past that. I don't know, it's just a thought. It's just kind of one of the things that I would like to see, the downtown kind of expanding, not staying in that little spot. I think there's more room there. Go north. So what? Indian Creek is there. I mean, that's just me. I mean, I'm a dreamer. But that's just one of my, I don't know, one of the things that I know I've said before in the NDC. I'd like to see it grow. It can't be just there. I think a lot of the factors are the space. How do you get in there? How do you get out? Where you're parking? That can all be addressed if we're looking at a future plan of growth and expanding that. Thank you.
Jordan Baker, BID, and one of the factors that we are dealing with right now that would prohibit us from expanding in any way is the lack of city services. And that's something that can be addressed specifically by council members in the budget process. So there we go, okay. I don't know. I'm assuming that it can be. Mr. Councilman Haverfield might correct me. But the budget process and funding adequate streets, staff, and parking enforcement, for instance, police patrol, I believe, I haven't decided to run for council member yet, but I believe those are things that I might have influence over if I was a council person. And so I think that is perhaps a reason why Councilman Haverfield, you could be here in this meeting today.
Well, thank you for the invitation to be here, obviously. Thank you for your comments. There's a lot of different hats that we wear as council members. I sit on the NDC board, so I've been on that board for 9 years now. I've been involved in the urban renewal process. We've seen the construction of a library and the Hugh Nichols building and others that fall within the urban renewal area. So there are limitations. Obviously, any improvements that the NDC can be a part of need to fall within that urban renewal area. That's the first thing. There is an opportunity zone north of the tracks as well that can be utilized that has nothing to do with urban renewal as long as the knowledge is given as a part of a developer's efforts coming in. So as ambassadors for the city, when we talk to people about why would you come to Nampa, and we can share with them the positive nature of how we can interact with them with a public-private collaboration of cost sometimes, where you're talking about utility improvements, well, that falls in the Nampa Development Corporation's ability. We are now limited by state statute that we can't build buildings anymore. That was something that was allowed, but it's no longer allowed. We can purchase property and we can improve infrastructure as far as utilities, sidewalks, and such. The whole effort of being that we would be an attractive location for developers to come in and want to give their, use their dollars to build up, the vertical nature of construction. So it's a collaborative effort. So that's, again, from a city standpoint, yeah, obviously it's important to hear. I didn't know if the reason for this meeting was to talk about downtown only. That was my point. Maybe I didn't make it clear. When we see vision casting that goes clear around into the whole area of impact and the potential growth of our city limits, those are topics that we talk about when we talk about police services. That we're limited by our budget each year and the ability to expand that. In time, when the urban renewal sunsets and we are able to get those tax dollars that have been going to pay off bonds to be able to come in to help increase our funding for police and used to be for fire. They're on their own now. I saw them here somewhere. But, they're doing their own thing at this point. But, we're all in this together. I've been a resident of Nampa for 43 years. We've raised our kids here and raising our grandkids now, and we've started businesses here. We've invested in the community totally, but you wouldn't know that. We run across people all the time. You don't know us on a daily basis. I even heard the mayor say that once, that she was introduced as the mayor, and the person didn't even know her. That caught me off guard. I mean, she's probably the most recognizable person in town at this point. So anyway, yes, we're all in this together. My concern is we spend time on parsing words, putting in these vision and mission statements, and we don't really get to the core nature of what we're trying to accomplish. And if you're trying to accomplish downtown and to make it the best that it can be, let's talk about that from a simplistic nature of, do we want it to be entertainment? And, it talked about shopping and business, that type of thing. Now we're throwing residential in there. Then let's talk about that. Let's focus on that. That's important to us. But then we're kind of losing track of what Nampa was built on. It was a rail line that came through. It was an agricultural-based community. How do we retain that nature and the history of that so that our kids and grandkids and great-grandkids know what our true values were? We don't want to lose that. Do we limit the size of the buildings in downtown? Now, that's a question. Certain municipalities do, because their fire service only reaches so high, and so they'll limit everything to a 4-story building. Do we want to go that route? That's kind of the questions I'm mulling around in my mind, and I apologize if I came across as being unappreciative of being here. I am. That's why I took time off from my job to come here to be with you guys. So,
Thank you for those comments. Anybody who hasn't spoken that wants to speak up? We do have a comment that came in from someone listening to us over the airwaves. What about a downtown task force quarterly meeting involving all parties coming together for open discussion rather than merging groups or creating additional committees? And it seems sensible to me that the city as an entity exists to facilitate such collaboration and be the prime source of coordinated action, although all entities should certainly have equal partnership and open communication in meetings. So, thank you. One more. Why take out family-friendly out when Caldwell has just done family-friendly plaza with splash pads and kids' park and events with huge success?
So I would, Matthew Lynn, BID, I would jump on that one immediately. And I would say Caldwell's a perfect example of why we would take out the word family-friendly. Because if I said family-friendly to a very certain subset of the population here, Indian Creek would not have its own alcohol license and serve beer and wine on the plaza. They would not run a for-profit cocktail bar on the stage next to the ice skating ribbon. How could that be family-friendly? So we can all sit here and say, yes, look at the beautiful family-friendly environment. I take my kids down there all the time. They love the splash pad, beautiful community living room. But that family-friendly word could be a trigger because it means different things to different people.
Including the council people.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we are at next steps. We've thrown out some ideas. We just wanted to throw these out for discussion, which I think it generated, and I appreciate everyone's comments. So we are at our next steps, and we want to hear from all of you. So what do you see are the next steps in completing the Downtown Action Plan? Thanks for your patience. Take your time, everyone. So who's still typing? It says 5 people typing. Down to 2.
I didn't write.
Maybe what's up there, I can't read that. Good God, girl, I'm 58 years old.
One person.
But up there, why are we completing it? We did complete it. Yeah.
We completed
No,
on
no.
behalf of the DNCA, but not BID or not the city, what they can contribute to the NDC.
Okay, we'll let that person keep typing. Oh, two people, one person. And we'll start looking at what some of the answers were. I'm really excited to see this. Okay. Okay, this is good. So we have to have wins and see movement forward. Action, prioritize, and start doing. Just start. Possible funding mechanisms so we know the scope of projects we can do. Really good suggestion. Consensus and action, exclamation point. Do something and adjust as we go. Yep. Determining a visual quick win that the public can see and that we can all agree on. Example, splash pad, playground, or picnic area. Yeah, I think you've done that with your programming in the last year. I mean, that to me was a really visual representation that more is happening downtown. Creation of a living document that outlines specific actions for success, as well as visual representation of those actions will lead to. I think I know who that one wrote. We all know who wrote that one, right? Create a list of desired outcomes and try to match with business and community interests. Don't know. Seems like there's still a lack of synergy among all the parties. Don't know if meetings are helping much or not. Lots of jurisdictional representation, looking for collaborative objectives. It's a challenge. Yeah, I think that's a good observation. Project identification by each body. Oh, Diane. No. Go back to this. Okay. Create a list of desired outcomes and try to match with the business. Don't know, we've done that. Project identification by each body and collaborating the identified overlapping projects. So all of you saw in that packet those action steps that DNCA put together. And that is, that form, Krista can send out after this meeting. And we'd like everyone to participate. You can identify yourself or you can identify the group that you're in. But please, if you would, take that, especially on the quick wins. I think DNCA and the bid bodies really gave us a good start on those quick wins. But I think we need more of those, and we need to, massage those a little bit and identify who's going to be the lead group in implementing those. Defining roles and responsibilities, setting a facilitator to keep the groups on track and accountable, coming up with a unified vision moving forward, asking for public support and comments. Really great ideas. Does anybody want to take ownership on that one? No?
Claudia.
Oh, Diane. Yeah. Okay, let's try this again.
One quick thought. As we talked about downtown, the one thing I didn't hear mentioned, we talk about it being the living room or the gathering place for our families. The one thing that's missing, though, is the doorways. As you come into downtown, you don't really have visual corridors that are pleasing. So that's something to think about as well.
Yeah, we're trying to capture that under the connections descriptor, so that's a good point. Propose an actual plan to designate responsibilities so that each board can review and comment on it. Working on the actual steps together as a united force to accomplish the overall goals of improving Nampa. Not sure, but would love to see some focus groups, which include teenagers, about ways they would like to see downtown improved. coordination, agreement on strategic goals, development of supporting steps, establishment of timeliness and funding, creating a list of business types we would like to see in the downtown and approving them to help create more vitality, creative thinking and communication, actionable items in the short term and long term, actionable items and execution timelines, identification and implementation of action items, identify future open space, let the DNCA run with it, working together with other stakeholders and downtown interests. Nobody's going to take responsibility for that one. I was going to say, you wrote it. I know who wrote it. Everyone on the same page, no overlapping of duties, clear definition of downtown, updating this document to reflect current discussion and the review. We do need to move to action. 3D modeling of the vision, schematic of dream or vision. The tremendous number of great ideas, and I think it's very consistent with the direction that we think we're taking, and so appreciate that we might be on the right track. Anybody want to comment on their recommendations? They want to take ownership of it, other than the ones we already know wrote them? Yeah. Mayor, do you have any closing? I got her right in the middle of eating a cookie.
Actually, I was the one that said just update the doc to reflect current discussion, saying we do need to move to action. And that's the one thing that I just saw over and over and over again, action. And Matt, when you laughingly wanted to turn it to DNCA, just, you know, what I saw in that, and I appreciated the humor, was that it isn't that there's a group of people trying to own it and kick everybody out. You're wanting the help. Because I know there are times, and for Matt, you've been the only, you know, on cleanup days, and you're cleaning up and you're working hard, and there aren't too many people downtown working and cleaning and sweeping and covering everything. It gets really hard, the work that you guys are doing downtown, and I greatly appreciate your efforts. It's not been easy. And so I just love the expertise that we have on the board, the work that's being done, the collaboration that's taking place. And really, we can formalize communication and always do better. We can always do better. But you know what? We've got a group of people that we need to celebrate, because we've got a group of people that are all on the same page. We're kind of still trying to figure out how to get it done well. And every once in a while we clash. But you know what? That's okay, because that's how we get better, right? We get better and we figure it out, and we'll continue to figure it out. But if we can just get this document, go back pretty quickly and look at it and say, did we get it right? Now let's go get it done. And we won't be done, right? But we need to move forward. So I just appreciate the work that's being
really
done.
good.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Do you have some? Yes, sir.
So I like having too many chiefs doesn't work. So I think letting the DNCA run with it, and then tell us what you need from the city. And if somebody doesn't try something, it'll never happen. So that's my 2 cents worth. Dale Reynolds, City Council.
Marie, you want it? Yeah, she can have it.
First of all, as chair of the DNCA board, I want to thank everybody for being here. And as you can see, we have a very lively, active group, which bodes really well for our community, because you can see that we challenge each other to do our very best. It's not always perfect, but we learn each time that we do something, and we're all committed for the same thing. So I hope you all see that we really want success for our downtown, because speaking to the greater community of Nampa, people will come here, they'll come to the industrial park, they'll do all those things when they see a thriving downtown. And that's really what it's about because, and you can see that we all respect each other and it's okay that we challenge each other. And so feel free to contact any of us because we are here to make this better. And I just have to congratulate our Oscar and Honey, who are our staff, who have done a phenomenal job kind of keeping it all together and creating amazing events. And just thank you.
Great, thank you.
So real quick, Mark Skibout, BID. I was part of the BID when we put family friendly in, and I'm now part of the BID when we take family friendly out, right? So, yeah, that's right, I matured. So, but that goes to show what these documents do, right? They're there to cast a vision. They're there to push us into a direction that we believe we need to go. These are living documents, they're not set in stone. But I want to echo what the mayor said, it's all about action. Having said that, I was on this meeting almost similar to this when I started the BID many years ago, and some of those actions weren't executed, right? It takes everybody in this room to act on that vision. And we have to make sure that we're committed to that. That's why the council's here, that's why NDC is here, BID, and NDCA is all here. It takes that group, that group's friends, that group's families, see, family friendly, right? To be a part of what's not only going on downtown, but what's going on in the park, right? It takes the whole Napa community. So that's part of our core, which hopefully breathes out to the outside of Nampa also. So I just want to encourage the group here, thank you for being here, but also be a part of downtown. Matt owns a business downtown, I own a business downtown, I also have another full-time job, I serve on 3 other boards, right? So we're all doing what we need to do to help downtown thrive. And we can't do that by ourselves, it's a heavy lift, and that's why I appreciate everybody that's here.
Thank you very much. Those are great comments.
Is it okay if I just echo off? My name is Honey Goodman, again with the DNCA. So when you look down our action plan, I agree with what Mark said. It's really easy to put an action plan together and let it just sit and doesn't always grow legs. So when I was looking down, when everybody was talking like a few minutes ago about the action steps that we dream about in the first 12 months, there is one thing on the action list that would take a collaboration of the room that we couldn't just do on our own. So I was looking down that list, and for example, one of the things that we put on our action plan is the development of a strategic bollard plan for multiple event space. That's something that we couldn't do on our own. It would take the city, it would take others in order to actually make that happen. And so I think that's the power of the collaboration of this room is when this document that we have created gets in the hands of other people, like what is your piece in the puzzle, and that it does take, I'm excited about the DNCA taking it and running, but there's parts of it where it does take the people in this room. And I think the mayor and the Cushlands for getting us all in the same room. This is a really exciting time, and I can't wait to see a year from now what we've accomplished together.
Thank you. Okay. You say anything? I'm going to let Phil do a wrap up here. Since I've been talking.
I've been at this for over 50 years, obviously. And one thing I have learned over those 50 years, if you want to accomplish something, you have to make it somebody's job. Somebody needs to be tabbed with the leadership role. And I've also learned, I read an interesting book a few years ago called The Art of Followership, that you can't make the leader and then just wash your hands of the whole thing and walk away. So I think that's probably a lesson that maybe this collaboration might involve is who's going to lead on a specific piece of the puzzle and how do we support that leadership role to help that person or that entity be successful. And so it's everybody's job, but somebody's got to be in the engineer's seat. And so I think that's probably something that is worth thinking about is how do we help others succeed. The other thing, observation I had, and the reason we structured that task list in terms of near-term wins, middle-term wins, and longer-term wins, is I have found that you need a whole lot of small wins early on so that you have the confidence that you can actually do something and you can demonstrate to the broader community that in fact you're doing something. And so you don't take the moonshot on the first step. I think having some mechanism to make visible progress on small steps, I think is going to be a rewarding thing that then sustains you maybe to pick up the next small step and then the third and the fourth. And each time celebrate it. You know, don't be bashful about having cookies, you know. And so I think that's, it's all part of a real psychological enterprise. Maybe at some point you do a RUDAT to come in and basically redetermine the size of downtown. And what is that? You know, you want a 50-story building down? You know, I was the city manager of Bellevue, Washington, when the tallest building was 12 stories. They're now building 600-foot towers in that city. And they did that on purpose. I'm not suggesting you need 600-foot towers in downtown Nampa, but there was a vision articulated there visually that basically this is where we're going, and that vision stuck for 30 years. And so I think the visualization is important, but that's a longer-term strategy. So I think, you know, bunts are sometimes pretty good when you have a bunch of them in close succession. And so I think I'm sustained by the participation here. The fact you had this many people show up on an afternoon to talk about downtown is pretty impressive. And I think the fact that this is nested into the broader implementation framework that we're working on suggests that it's an integral part of the broader city vision. And so while you might focus on this stuff today, you're all players in the broader vision too. So I want to thank you for being here, and we're not done with you yet, I assume. Mayor?
You know, I repeat the same thing, and you guys have heard it. Few can be successful unless a lot of others want them to be. And as I sit here and think about where we are, besides the thank you to each of you, you know what, I got to thank Kevin Daniels. I'm looking at Angie. It almost makes me teary because I think about somebody that's made a difference that isn't here. And you know what? Kevin graduated from Nampa High. He doesn't live here, and he hasn't for a very, very long time. But you know what? He has invested in our downtown. It's because of Kevin that I started meeting with him years ago. And I would sit and talk to him and say, how do we do this? Well, that's when I was at the chamber. And you know what? Even as mayor, it has been so doggone slow. But he paid for several of us to go to Main Street a number of years ago. He's done that 2 or 3 times. He paid to bring Ed McMahon in to meet with us, to meet with the Department of Commerce. And I'm still working on funding for Main Street from a state level. But you know what? That's somebody that is kind of a silent hero that is giving back to our community. Part of why we are here today is because you've had a few people that maybe aren't here that have been investing and saying, guys, move it forward, move it forward, move it forward. And that's part of why we're even here today. Angie, thank you. So Angie is Kevin's sister that I so appreciate that you've decided to relocate here permanently and actually contribute your time, because you were alongside Kevin when you guys revitalized Pioneer Square. That was a big development. And I sat and picked Kevin's brain, right? How did you do that? I mean, it wasn't an easy thing because they were in a very difficult environment with the different business owners, just like we have dealt with here in downtown. It doesn't happen overnight. And a lot of people look at Nampa and say, so why haven't you done X? Well, it's because you have people that individually own buildings that haven't been willing to do anything with them. That is not easy, but we're going to continue to move forward, and we're going to find those little wins, and thank you for saying that. And I think the other day a number of us had chairs and sat out in the middle of what was going to be the Wall Street area, and we talked about some things that we could do. And you know what? I think we can come up with a few little wins that will take us forward. And then we got to keep moving forward and not lose heart at the time it's taking, because it does take time. But it takes all of us working together. So I hope that we will all continue to collaborate, to work together, We have an amazing downtown. I think we're all here because we love our community, and everybody carries a little different weight. Thank you for the weight and the load that you each carry in making it happen. So I really appreciate you being here, and we're going to get it done. And Oscar, you've done such a great job on these events, and honey, thank you for coming in, because you've done wonderful, and it's just excellent that we've been able to engage you and say, hey, could you carry this for us, and you've been willing to carry it. So thank you for doing it, because that's a win that's important. And honey, thank you. I'm glad that you've shifted your career and your passion and commitment, because it does take someone that's focused to lift it, because we're all working other jobs. And so really appreciate your efforts. So as we close today, we do need a motion to adjourn. So is there anyone that would like to move, and if it's okay that we adjourn? Are we ready? Dale, you're. I have one more thing. Okay.
It's come to my attention that we have a birthday in the house today, and she took her birthday to come to this meeting, and that's Claire, our library director. And I would like to nominate Randy to sing happy birthday, or lead us. He could lead us in that. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you so much. Claire, happy birthday. That was so sweet of you, Dale. Good for you. And, okay, so Wendy Rhodes moved and Matt seconded. Okay, we are adjourned, and we'll come